I'm Jody from Meadowbank Crochet. If you're a crocheter, it's very likely that you've got a bunch of random balls of yarn laying around, or maybe that one skein that's left over from a project that you've done and you just don't know what to do with them. Today I'm going to show you how to take things like these and turn them into beanie hats. So follow along with me and I'll show you how. Okay, so let's get started on what you're going to need in order to make a beanie hat. So the first thing is that you're going to need a crochet hook. You only need one, but multiples are ideal if you have them. My favorite are the 5mm and the 4.5mm. I tend to use those two sizes for most of the hats that I use. Sometimes I use a 4, sometimes I use a 5.5, sometimes I use a 6, but really if you've got a 5 and a 4.5, for me, I can make pretty much anything with those. You're going to want a good pair of scissors. It's useful to have a tape measure, but it's not necessary. You're going to need a tapestry needle, just a needle with a big hole so that you can put yarn through it. And if you're relatively new to crocheting, a couple of stitch markers are useful to have just so that you can mark the top and the bottom of each of your rows until you kind of get used to identifying where your rows are. So these are optional. You can use safety pins as well if you've got some safety pins. Don't worry if you don't have these. They're just an optional thing. Then, of course, you're going to need yarn. So I showed you these two hats in the intro. You can make stripy options, and those are really good, again, for stash busting. If you've got these little remnants of yarn that are left over from projects that you've done before, they're a really good way to use up this type of yarn making stripy hats. So I'll show you how to make a stripy hat, or again, if you've just got a 100-gram ball, this is Aran weight yarn, or it's a 4 weight yarn, Aran weight, I'm not sure, but 100 grams. So if you've got a ball of 100 grams left over, that's for sure gonna make a full hat. So if you've got any of this type of stuff, you're ready to go. This is all you're going to need to make your beanie hats. Now, if you want to get a little bit more advanced, one useful bit of kit to use that you might have already in your kitchen is a kitchen scale. And the reason I say that is it is a good way to be able to tell how much weight of yarn that you have. So for instance, I've got these 3 leftover balls of yarn. Now, I know just from making a lot of these beanie hats now that this is enough to make one stripy beanie hat. I'll probably even have a little bit left over. But if you're not sure and you're not confident, what I can tell you is take your balls of yarn, stick them on a scale, like this kitchen scale. And from experience, these beanie hats take anywhere between 75 grams. I think this one's even less than 75 grams, but you know, if you've got 75 grams, that's enough, most likely, to make the beanie hat. But if you've got, you know, these 3 balls here are 105, so hopefully you can see that on the scale. If you can't, the scale says 105. So this is more than enough to make a beanie hat. So if I'm not sure and I've got balls of yarn and I just want to really confirm that I've got enough, a little kitchen scale is an easy way to do that. And again, if you've sort of got anywhere between 75 and 100 grams of yarn in the balls collectively that you've found, you're ready to go and you can make a beanie hat. Optional bit of kit, but if you've got it, it's just a nice confidence builder so that you're less likely to lose yarn chicken. And if you don't know what yarn chicken is, it's hoping that you've got enough yarn, but not being sure. So Yarn Chicken Buster. Okay, so I'll show you how to make both types of hat, a solid hat or a stripy hat. So let's start with the solid hat. And for the solid hat and a stripy hat, they actually both start exactly the same way. So let's start with the solid one, and then again I'll show you the stripy one. First things first, I like to pull from the middle of my balls of yarn. Does mean that you're going to get some what we call yarn barf, where you have all of this that comes out. Don't worry, it seems a little bit intimidating at first, but you'll end up using this all pretty quickly. So you now just need to find the end, and of course this one's not going to be easy to find, but this is real life in crocheting, so if this happens to you, just know that it happens to everyone. Let me find the end here. Oh, for heaven's sakes. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to show you how to make the single color ribbed beanie first. Both the ribbed beanie and the multicolored striped beanies are made the exact same way. The only difference with the striped beanie is every other rib you're just going to make a different color, but I'll show you that at the end. So if you're an experienced crocheter, you can see this is a ribbed stitch beanie. The difference with this and a ribbed maybe cuff that you might have made before is that at the top of the beanie there's a decrease. So most of the ribbing is half double crochets, and then at the very top we just do single crochets for the last 5 stitches, and that makes a nice tidy top to the hat. It makes a better arc at the top, dome of the hat, and it just sits nicer both flat and as well as on the head of the person wearing it. So it's normally just half double crochets, and then the last 5 will be single crochets to decrease at the top and make a nice finished top to the hat. It's just less bulky at the top as well. So that's what we're going to do. So let's get started. I'm going to make a slip knot, and again, if you don't know how to do that, there's a million videos on YouTube showing you how to do that. And then I'm going to go ahead and make 42 chains. So this is a 5mm hook that I'm using, and I'm using Aran weight yarn. So for a 5mm hook and Aran weight yarn and my tension that I tend to use, 42 stitches gets me to the length that I want, which is going to be about 12.5 inches. So you're just going to do 42 single crochets to make your chain. So chain 42, and when you've got 42 on your chain, meet me back here and I'll show you what to do after you get to 42 on your chain. So pause the video and I'll see you in a second. Okay, so we've now got our 42 chains done, and if you're the type of person who normally likes to crochet into the back bump or the back loop, it does give a nicer finish to things like blankets. But for this beanie hat pattern, I don't actually recommend that you crochet into the back bump or the back loop, just because you want a smaller, less refined edge actually when you go to close the beanie hat, because this is going to be one end of the hat and you're making a long piece of material that they're then going to close together. And what I have found is if you don't go into the back loop, it just makes a more invisible seam at the back when you go to join the pieces together. And I'll show you again how I join things together when we get there. So rather than crocheting into the back loop, you actually want to just look straight at your chain flat, and you skip the chain that your hook is in, skip the chain after that. So you're going to go into the first, second, third chain, and you're going to do half double crochet. And so that's yarning over. Again, you're skipping the loop you're in, you're skipping the next loop, you're going into the third loop on the chain. You're going to yarn over, go into the back loop of these two in the V. You're going to go into the back loop, and that way you've got 3 loops on your hook. And then you're going to do a half double crochet, which is yarning over and pulling through all 3 of the loops. That's a half double crochet. You're going to do that again all the way down until you've got 5 chains left. So again, yarn over, back loop only. You're going to put your hook through. You've got 3 on your hook, and you're going to pull through for a half double crochet. Again, yarn over, back loop only, pull up a loop, pull through for a half double crochet. Now you're going to just keep doing that all the way until you have 5 stitches left. So continue doing half double crochets all the way up until you come to 5 stitches left. And if you want to use one of the stitch markers that I mentioned are useful, you can do that now. You can look for 5 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put your stitch marker in the 5th from the end, and that way you know where to stop. So continue to do your half double crochets until you've got 5 stitches left. And so stop the video, keep doing half double crochets, and I'll meet you back with 5 stitches left to go. Okay, so we've half double crocheted up until we have 5 left. I've come to my stitch marker, and so I've only got 5 stitches left in this row. And so I'm going to go ahead and remove my stitch marker. And for the final 5 chains that you've got, you're just going to do a single crochet. The reason you're doing a single crochet is, again, this is what ends up being the top of the beanie hat, and you want to decrease it so that it makes a less bulky top to the hat. So you're going to do 5 single crochets, and so that's again going through this back loop here. And I tend to pull these up quite high and make super loose single crochets for the final 5. So put your hook through, bring up a loop, and make it quite loose. The reason that I do these last 5 quite loose single crochets is that as your hat starts to build and you've got more and more rows, these last 5 get squeezed by the bulk of the rest of it being so much bigger that it sort of squeezes them down and makes them harder to find. So if you get in the habit of just making them a bit looser, they're easier to find when you get to the 5 at the end. It's just easier to find the back loop that you're going to want to try and find to crochet into. So get in the habit of doing these final 5 quite loose. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got one more to do, and that will make the 5 single crochets. And again, quite loose, those final ones. So you're going to want to then do one more single crochet, and that's just to be able to turn your work. And so when you're turning your work, you're actually turning it completely upside down. So we were just going this way. Oh, there's Penny. we were just going this way. You're now going to do that single crochet at the end, and you're gonna not only turn your work, but you're gonna turn it completely upside down so that you're crocheting from the opposite side that you were just crocheting from. Give me a second to get Penny out of the frame. Okay, she's going on her own. Right, so now that you've turned your work, this loop that your hook is in right now is just your turning loop, so that doesn't count as a stitch. You're going to want to go in and look here now for the stitches that you had just created. And what makes the ribs in the beanie hat is the fact that you're only ever crocheting into the back loop of each of the stitches that you've created previously. So as you're looking at your row here and the V's that you've just created, so this is the back side that should be faced up now, and you're looking at the stitches that you've just created, this is the front loop nearest to you. The back loop is the one away from you. And so this would be the full V of the stitch that you've created. So you don't ever want to crochet into the front loop for this pattern. You're only ever crocheting into the back loop. And that's what starts to create this ribbed look that you want the hat to have. And ribbing also is really nice and stretchy. So again, for a beanie hat, it's good because it gives sizing for most heads. You can kind of squish it in to fit a smaller head, and it stretches out nicely to fit a larger head. So we've got our turning loop here that we don't want to count. So we're going to go in and look at the previous loops, the 5 loops that we just created. And again, this is where them being quite loose makes them easier to find. You're going to not crochet into the top, the front loop. You're going to crochet into the back loop. So you want to put your hook through the back loop only, and then bring your yarn through. And again, you want to make these quite loose so they're easier to find when you come back up trying to find them. So that's the first one. Again, front loop, back loop. You want to just go into the back loop. And again, quite loose. So there's 2. Front loop, back loop. You want to go into the back loop. And again, a nice loose single crochet. Front loop, back loop. Back loop. Nice loose single crochet. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more to go. Back loop. Single crochet. So those are your 5 single crochets. And again, if you want to, you can take your stitch marker and just mark your 5 so that you know when you get to that, those are your single crochets when you come back up the other side. So now we've done the 5 single crochets. Now we need to start doing the half double crochets down the rest of the hat to kind of bulk out the rest of it. So again, yarn over through the back loop only, just like you were for the single crochets. Bring up your 3 loops and pull your yarn through. Again, yarn over, back loop only, put your needle through, your hook through, pull up a loop. You've got 3 on your hook. Bring through your yarn. That's your half double crochet. Again, yarn over, back loop only, pull through, 3 on your hook, half double crochet. And you can already start to see you're starting to create your very first rib. So this going through the back loop will start to create that ribbed look that you want. So keep going, half double crochet all the way down until you get to the end of this row. So you're just going to keep half double crocheting always in the back loop, not the front loop, just the back loop through the whole thing, so that you start to create that rib. So go ahead and you can stop the video, and when you're at the end, I'll show you how to finish the end of your round. So if you've got a couple of stitches left, maybe 2 stitches left at the end, come back and meet me at the end there, and I'll show you how to find your final stitch at the end of this first row. And then we'll go from there. So meet me back at a couple of stitches from the end. Okay, so you should have now crocheted your half double crochets until you've got a couple of stitches left. I've got 2 left to do at the end, and this is what your work should be looking like. You should start to see that rib, and again, that's this ribbed detail that you'll see in the beanie hat starting to emerge. And so when you've got 2 left, I just want to show you how to find the final sort of V-stitch, because it kind of gets a little bit twisted and hard to see. So your second to your last should be relatively easy to find. It's again just the back loop, and you do your half double crochet, but the very final one always seems to just be a little bit twisted. So you can sort of easily see the front loop here, but the back one is kind of always tucked away a little bit back here. So you just want to make sure that you're finding that sort of twisted, tucked away one back there, and then finishing with your half double crochet. And then, just like we did at the top, where we did a single crochet to turn our work, we're going to do that at the end of each row as well. So you just want to do single crochet, and then that allows you to completely flip over your work. So before, just a second ago, we were doing that side. Now we're completely flipping our work over, and we're going to go back up the row from here. So again, where your hook is the single crochet where you've turned your work. So you're not going to be crocheting into that. You're going to find the next V here, and again, you're never crocheting into the front loop. You're only ever crocheting into the back loop. So, you know, as you look straight on at the work that you just did down that line, you're never doing the front loop, the loop that is the closest to you. You're doing the work that is, you're doing the loop that is away from you. So again, this loop that my hook is in was my turning one, so I'm going to skip that, and I'm on the fatter part. This is the skinnier part down here where we do the singles. I'm in the fatter part, and so I'm going to do a half double crochet again into that back loop, three loops on my hook, and pull through. And that is the first half double crochet again. So again, back loop, 3 loops on my hook, pull through. And you're just gonna, again, continue to do that all the way up until you get to your stitch marker where you know that you're then gonna do the 5 single crochets. So meet me up there, and I'm gonna show you again a little trick that I use now that we've got the single crochet up there at the top where we turned our work. I'm going to show you something I do that just kind of makes it a little tidier at the top. So when you've got 5 stitches left, meet me back and I'll show you how to finish. And then this is the pattern that's going to repeat for the entire hat until we get to the width that we want. And I'll talk about the width again when we get to the top of this this row. So pause the video, meet me back when you've got your 5 left, and I'll show you how to finish the 5. Okay, so you should have done your half double crochets all the way up until you've got 5 left. And again, you should really start to now be seeing that's your full rib showing here. So every 3rd row that you do really then starts to protrude a rib. And so let me show you how you finish these last 5. And again, this is now going to be the pattern repeat. You're just going to be going up and down, doing this exact same starting and finishing of each of the rows. So let me show you how to finish the last 5. And again, this is just my personal preference, and it just makes finishing the hat a little bit easier. So again, these last 5, you're going to want to do loose. So again, single crochets, but keeping them quite loose makes it easier for you to find them as, again, your hat starts to kind of squeeze here at the top, because this is your decreased part. So that's 1, 2, 3, this is 4. So that's my 4th single crochet. Now, this is the 5th single crochet here, right here, this V right here. And this little loop up here was the single crochet that we did where we turned our work. So this was the single crochet, turn our work. Now, it's completely up to you as to whether you crochet into the back of the 5th single crochet, or what I tend to do, because again, as the hat starts to squeeze in a little bit, this 5th single crochet starts to get harder and harder to see. And so what I tend to do is skip that one and put my loop through that single crochet where I turned my work. So if you do that, it just kind of makes a straighter top, and that final stitch is just a little bit easier to find, especially because this starts to get squeezed, and as the hat starts to get bigger and bigger, you'll see that 5th stitch is just sometimes hard to find. So crocheting into the single loop where you turned your work is just a little bit easier to find. And so again, you've got to now, we've finished the 5 loops. We've got the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're going to want to do a single crochet, and you're now just going to flip your work, and you're going to do your 5 single crochets, your double crochets until you get to the end, do the single crochet, turn your work, go back up. That's the repeat. You're just going to keep doing that until you've got 20 of these ribs. So this is 1 rib, 2 ribs, 3 ribs. And again, your hat will, your work will look more like this. So once you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, when you can count 20 distinct ribs, that's for me the best width to then stop, and I'll show you how to join the hat together once you've got the right width. So keep going up and down until you show 20 ribs, and then so pause the video once you've got 20 ribs, come back. If you need to go back and watch how, you know, we got to where we're at, or if you need to see the repeat, just reverse and keep looking back at the video to help you figure out the repeat. But you're just going to keep going now until you've got 20 ribs, and then I'll show you how to join the hat together. And I'll talk about the measurements and all of that as well, so that you know how wide to make it. So pause the video, go back if you need to. When you've got 20 ribs, come back and we'll talk about how to finish the hat. Okay, so you should now have something that looks like this. I've got 20 ribs here in my hat. So again, this is finished. This is what it looks like when you should have finished all 20 of your rows. And from a measurement perspective, here at the bottom, that's about 18 inches. It's usually, again, for my tension and a 5mm hook, it usually ends up being around 18 inches wide at the base here, at the widest part. So that's how you finish the ribs in your hat. Okay, so now what do? Oh, and just so that you can see, with my 100-gram ball, this is sort of, this floppy bit here is how much I have left. So there's still quite a bit left in my 100-gram Aran weight yarn ball. Right, so now how do you join it together to make the hat? What you're gonna do is look at both sides of the hat and look here at the top where you've done your decreases. You'll see there's sort of a dent here where you go down into the single crochets. Now, if you're doing a striped hat, there's definitely going to be a very clear right side and wrong side, because you'll see sort of some, where the stitches come together, you'll see a bit of a speckled look, and you'll want to make sure that that is the inside side. But here on a solid color hat, it's a little less obvious which side is the front and which side is the back. They look very similar. So I would just say, look at your hat all up, you know, how everything looks, which side looks the best out of the two. And so in my hat, I actually think this side looks the least nice and this side looks the most nice. So I want this side to be the outside of my hat. So I'm gonna go ahead and make this side the inside. So I wanna fold the inside, fold the hat in half so that the side that I want to be the outside of the hat is here on the inside of this fold. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take your hat and find where your final loop was and get your hook back in there. And now all you're going to do is join the hat with a single crochet all the way up so that it closes it up along this seam. Now, I've also found through experience that if you just do a regular single crochet, it looks fine, but to make this join smaller here on the part of the brim where you fold it over, and just blend in a little bit more with the rest of the rib. So you'll see here, this is the join, this is a regular rib here on either side. To make this smaller and flatter, I join together the hat slightly differently down here than I do for the rest of it. So I'll show you that method, but you can just join it however you want. If you've got a different way of joining or you find something works better for you, that's fine. This is just my strategy for joining. So what you're going to want to do is have your hook here in your final stitch, You don't need to do a single crochet to turn your work because we're not turning anything now, we're just joining. And you're going to want to come over to this side of the hat, the opposite side. So this is the one side and the other side. And you'll also see here, this side right here is the side of the hat that has the V's that are very clearly visible. Whereas this side is the first side that we did where I told you the less bulky it is, the better. So this is just your single crochet chains. So there's no V necessarily to pull into over here. These are all just single crochets that you're going to be joining to. So there's a V on one side and no V on the other side if you've started the hat the way that I told you to. So you're going to take the yarn and you're going to put your hook through the single crochet there, and then you're going to put your hook through, again, not the front loop, but the back loop only. And this is the part that is just for this brim of the hat. So you'll want to sort of decide how much of a fold up you're going to have and only do the back loop for this first part. It'll make more sense in a second. So you've got the back loop here. So you've got essentially 3 loops, and just like a half double crochet, you're just going to pull it through and pull quite tight so that everything tightens up really good there, because you want a nice tight end to that first stitch. So then we're going to keep doing that. You're going to go again into the single crochet and get that on your hook. And then here's that V. You're going to go just into the back loop and pull through both of those and pull through your single crochet, and again kind of pull everything tight. Again, single crochet on the one side, you want to pull in the back loop only and pull through all 3, keeping it really tight. You're just going to keep doing that until you reach the height of the brim. And for me, again, with the hat that I made, it's about 3.5 inches is the standard brim size. So 3.5 inches is what you're looking for. So just go up about 3.5 inches doing it this way. So again, you're going to go front loop, back loop, or the single crochet back loop, pull through all 3, single loop, back loop, pull through all 3. Keep doing that until you get to 3 inches. So get up to 3 inches and then come back and I'll show you how to keep going. Okay, so I've got about 3.5 inches here now where I've crocheted up, joining this seam. I'm now going to keep going, but I'm going to do this slightly differently until I get up to the top here. I'm going to, instead of doing the single crochet and the back loop, I'm going to do the full both loops. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to put my hook through the single crochet, and then instead of going just into the back loop here, I'm going to go in through the front loop and the back loop. And this then just really tightens up the top of the hat and makes a good, strong seam. So again, through my single crochet, through the front loop and the back loop. So I've got both of the loops of the V here on my hook, and then I'm going to just pull through all of that. And you're just going to keep doing that all the way up to the final single crochets that you did at the top of your hat. So keep doing that. Just go through the single crochet and both loops until you get all the way here to the top. When you get to the top, I'll show you what to do to close the top of the hat. Okay, so you should have now done your brim and then the rest of the join up to the end of the top. Now, how you finish this top part here is slightly different. And so so you actually don't need your crochet hook anymore. So you can put that aside. What you're now going to need are some scissors and that tapestry needle that I told you were going to need. So what you need to do here is you've got your loop where you've just finished stitching things up. What I tend to do then with the yarn that I've got here attached to my ball, I then take the yarn and I go down the length of the hat. So I've got my length laid down the length, and then I pull out enough to go down and back plus a couple of inches. And so that's the amount of yarn that you're going to need to close up the top of your hat. If you're a little scared that that's not going to be enough, just give yourself a little bit more, or go, back down again and do a down, up, and down. That'll be way more than enough. But for me, that down and up plus a couple of inches is usually about good. So I will cut my yarn, and now this ball of yarn can be made into a ball to go into a stripy hat at some point in the future. So this is now what I've got to close up my hat. And so to do that, I'm going to go ahead and take the end of the yarn that I've just cut, and I'm going to put it through my tapestry needle. And I find that actually if I take the end and fold it over to kind of create a little loop, that loop is easier to push through the tapestry needle, usually, to then pull it through. And so you want to pull your yarn through to where you're not pulling it all the way even. You've got your tail here and just a single cord of fabric. You then want to take that and put it through the loop that you have left over and pull tight. And then this is the yarn that you had at the start of your hat. Leave that on here because I tie this off in a knot at the end. So just leave that dangling for now. So now, to close the hat, what I like to do is tilt the now circle that you've got here upwards, and I actually create a little, I guess, plus sign, X. If you turn it this way, it's an X or a plus sign. I squeeze the top of the hat in to where it looks like a cross. And the reason I do that is it's easier to stitch it all together, and it just makes a nice top to the hat versus doing it just flat. The cross, I find, lays nicer on the top of your head than just if you sort of whip stitched it closed like this. So this is just my preference. If you prefer it flat, go for it. I do a little cross. And so you've sort of got your cross here roughly. And so what you do is you then take your yarn and you're just gonna push it through a couple of the, a stitch or two down from the top and pull the yarn through. Bring it over, move over just a tiny, tiny bit, and you're just whip stitching basically through the hat to close it up. And so I've done a couple of stitches there. Again, I'm just gonna find my little cross. I'm gonna make my little X or cross or whatever you want to call it here. And now I'm gonna take my yarn and I'm gonna go through this side into the other side of that cross. So you're kind of doing it diagonally through the X. Pull it through. Make sure that your little tail stays out of the way so that you can easily find it. And I'm going to go back through, over and through again. So I'm doing that first X twice. And then I'm going to come over to this side and do the opposite way. So I'm going to go from here over to here. So I'm going to put my yarn, my needle through. I'm going to go through that little join that I made there, past that and through the other side. And I'm going to pull that tight. And again, watch that your tail doesn't get sucked into all of this. And I'm going to pull that tight. And I'm going to go back again through and do that again so that each side of that cross and now your X is firmly started to be created. And now all you need to do is whip stitch these other three, because this one's already been whip stitched. That's where you started. You then did your X to make the top join together. Now you just need to whip stitch these three. So again, I'm just going to keep whip stitching through. I think it's called a whip stitch. I'm not an expert in this, but I'm just going to close things up, going 1 or 2 stitches down. You don't have to go crazy, and just close it up a couple of times to where you feel like it's really secure. So I've now done 2 sides. I'm going to turn my work and keep going, closing up this next arm of the X, going just a couple stitches down. Make sure that your tail is always free. Don't start closing it up with the tail. You're just closing it up with a single thread. And so you just keep going until you've got that one done. And then we've got one more to go. And so let's close that guy up. Making sure your tail doesn't get caught in anything. Single whip stitching along here. And then you're back to the first one that you did. And again, you can just do a couple more whip stitches. You're basically bringing your yarn back up to where it's next to that original tail from when you started. And so now that these two are near each other, I'm going to go ahead and take my needle off. I don't need my needle anymore. And now I've got these 2 pieces that I'm just going to tie in a knot. And don't go super tight here because you don't want to distort anything. The first knot, just stop right where it meets the yarn. You're going to do a second knot. You can pull that one a little bit tighter and then do a final third knot, and you want to pull that one super tight. And then you can take your scissors, snip off the yarn, and that's now your top closed. And so now all you need to do is turn your hat right side out. So you're gonna pull it inside, the insides or the outside in, inside out. You're gonna find where your joins are, and if you've joined it well enough, it's sometimes hard to find. There it is. That's my back. So this is the brim with the thinner, and that's the fatter. Where you did both sides of the V. This was the single side of the V, just to make that nice and small. And that's it. That's your completed beanie hat. Now, I promised I would show you how to make the striped hat. So again, almost everything that I just showed you is exactly the same as making this solid beanie hat. You're going to make ribs, you're going to close it the exact same way. The only difference between making a solid hat and a stripy hat is switching your yarn colors. So let me show you really quickly how you do that. And for this hat, because this weight of my other balls of yarn is skinnier than the Aran weight, I'm not sure what this is because it's stuff I've had in my stash for a really long time, but it's a smaller weight of yarn. So for this, I'm actually using a 4.5 millimeter hook. So you're starting your rows exactly how you started the solid. You're going to do the 42-ish chains to where it's about 12 inches, the half double crochets all the way up to where you've got your 5 single crochets. So the chain, half double crochets, and then you end with the 5 single crochets, again keeping those quite loose. You're going to turn your work exactly how you do the solid color hat, but here's where things get different. So with your hook, with the loop on your hook, this is where if you were doing a solid color beanie, you'd just chain 1, turn your work, and off you go, doing the next 5 singles and then half double crochet, back up, blah blah blah. Here you want to add the next color. So even though you've only done a single crochet and then 1 row of half double crochet, this isn't a full rib, but that's okay. You'll want to end your stripy hat with the same color that you start your stripy hat with. So that's the only thing you need to keep in mind. When you start your beanie hat with the stripes, your first row is going to be sort of half of the full stripe. You want to end with the same color that you started with so that when you join it, it makes a full stripe. So having said that, you want to add now your next color, and you can add 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 colors, however many colors you want to add. I've done stash busting hats like this where every single stripe is a different color because I just had lots of little balls of yarn that kind of went together, and so I made a beanie hat that was almost every single stripe was a different color. So it's an amazing stash buster. You're going to want to take your new color of yarn and just lay it over your hook. Leave yourself a good sized tail. You're going to pull that through, and now you're going to take your original color and just pull that tight so that it's nice and secure there against this loop. And now you're going to chain 1, and that's your turning loop. So that's your chain 1, turn your work. And now you're just going to go into your first of the 5 single crochets exactly like you did with the solid colored, and you're going to do your 5 loose single crochets, and you'll see it starts to create the so that's 1, oh wait, that was my turning one, so 1 2 3 4, one more, 5, and now you go into your half double crochets and it will start to create your stripy ribbed beanie. And so you'll just keep going, half double crochet to the end, and then you'll do the single crochet, turn your work, come back up, half double crochet, again in this color. So for each color, now you go down and up, down and up, down and up, and you can switch every other color or do a different color each time. But you're going to keep your ball of yarn. If you want to use this color again, you'll want to keep it on and just sort of carry it through. So when you come back up to the top, you can then put this yarn down or cut it off and add the new one, just weave in the new one to start it again. I can show you what that looks like as well. So give me a second and I'll show you what that transition is if you wanted to switch between the two colors. Okay, so I've just gone down and up with my first color of the stripes in my stripy hat. And here's where, when you're doing stripy hats, you'll really start to be able to see that for a stripy hat, there's a right side and a wrong side. This is the wrong side because you can see there's this variation between the pink and the white that you can very clearly see, and up here in the 5 single crochets you can really see that not clean connection between the two. It looks a little messy. However, if you flip it over, this is very clearly the right side. It just looks cleaner. It's a crisper line. You don't see the same sort of variegation in the stitch joining here on this side. It's just a cleaner look. So for the stripy hats, there's definitely a right side and a wrong side, but you continue to make it, flipping it over each time that you go up and down, just exactly like you did with the solid color hat. Anyway, so now that I've got to the top here, you have some choices. So when you're making a stripy hat, you can make it 2 colors, you can make it 3 colors, you can make it as many colors as you want. Also, just if you're working with these little balls of yarn, a helpful tip that I've found, find some little bowls and put your yarn in the bowls, and it keeps them, it makes it easy to pull the yarn from the ball because they roll nicely. You don't need to invest in those fancy yarn specific balls. You can go to a charity shop, they're full of different tiny little bowls, or buy some that you really like. Put your balls of yarn in the bowls and it just sort of corrals the balls and makes them easier to, again, pull from, and also, keep your yarn organized, because the more colors that you add on, you're never cutting off your color unless you are no longer going to use a color. So if I was going back and forth between pink and white, I would then, for my next row, I've done my final crochet at the top. I haven't done the single crochet to turn my work. If I were continuing with white, I would do the single crochet and turn my work with white, but I now want to make my next stripe pink again. So I would I'll just lay down the white. I'm going to bring up the pink, again, making sure that it's not the tail. You're going to then just bring that pink in, take the white, pull it tight so that you've got that now closed off, and you'll do your single crochet in the new color. You're going to turn your work and you'll just start again with the pink, the 5 singles, half double crochet up, 5 singles, and then you can drop the pink, add the white, do the single crochet, turn the work, and do the pink. Or if you really want to go crazy and stash bust, when you're here at the white, if you wanted to, let's say we wanted to use up some of this blue from our solid color hat, you could then just do the exact same thing. Lay the yarn over the hook, pull the white tight, do your single crochet, turn your work, and now you're adding in the blue as a blue stripe. And then you could switch between all 3 of these colors to make a 3-colored stripy hat. So I'd go down, up in blue, switch to the pink, down, up in pink, switch to the white, and you could make it a pink, white, and blue hat, for example. And again, you're just going to want to make sure that when you come to the end of your hat, that whatever color you started with, you'd end with. So if I were doing this hat, pink, white, and blue, I just want to make sure that I have enough of this pink left over that my final stripe that I'm doing is going to be in the pink, because you come down and you don't go back up in that pink. You're then joining your sort of half of a stripe on the one end to the half of the stripe on the other end, and that then makes the full stripe. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that was useful. That's how you make a stripy hat. So again, happy stash busting. One final thing I'll say for stash busting, if you've got 2 relatively lightweight yarns that you've got in your stash, these are super thin, these 2 yarns, but if you've got thin yarns that the colors kind of go together, the other option is to put the 2 colors together and use that to then create a hat where you just make it exactly the same as a solid color beanie, but you're crocheting both colors together, and it kind of creates, depending on how contrasting the colors are, like this is a sparkly white and a variegated pink that I've put together. Together, they make a nicer weight yarn, and you can really see, so these 2 colors are what made this hat. And so you can really see that they create a nice weight of a hat. This is a nice thick hat, but it was made out of 2 very skinny, thin balls of yarn that make a nice variegated pattern, and is another really good way to stash bust some, lighter weight colored yarns or lighter weight yarns. If you've got another one that matches it, and again, you've got between 75 and 100 grams between the 2 balls, that will make you a multi-stranded beanie hat as another stash busting option. I hope you found today's tutorial useful. Again, I'm Jody from Meadowbank Crochet. Thanks for joining me and learning how to make our beanie hats. If you're interested in making beanie hats and you're in the United Kingdom, I run a not-for-profit where we make beanie hats and donate them to hospitals and care homes. So if you're interested in learning more and you want to stash bust with me for a good cause, go to www.meadowbank.com meadowbankcrochet.uk and you can learn more. You can also find me on Facebook or Instagram under Meadowbank Crochet. Thanks for watching the tutorial. Happy beanie making!